Namaste to everyone, dear friends, students, scholars, and policy makers. Today, I invite you to journey with me into one of the most fascinating and contested space of our nation, the island of Great Nicobar. Many of you may have heard about the Government of India's recent decision to launch a massive development project there. A deep seaport, an airport, a free trade zone, and other facilities that could transform this distant island into a global maritime hub. But what you may not know is that this dream is not new. Nearly 4 decades ago, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi visited Great Nicobar Island and envisioned developing into a free port zone like Singapore. His proposal was bold, futuristic, and controversial. It sparked hope in some quarters and resistance in others. Between 1993 and 1996, during my own research work in Great Nicobar Island, I came across this debate again and again. I stayed in Port Blair until 2001, meeting scholars, ecologists, anthropologists, and policy thinkers who were deeply engaged in this issue. I had the privilege of meeting Professor S. Saldana, former professor of Indian Institute of Science, who shared with me his insights on the ecology sensitivity of these islands. Eminent professors like Madhav Gadgil and Ramachandra Guha, along with many NGOs and forums, strongly opposed Rajiv Gandhi's proposal to make Great Nicobar Island as a free port zone, and warning that the island's unique ecology and indigenous people would suffer irreparable damage. Yet here we are in 2020s with India once again reviving the project. This time the context is different. India is raising global power. The Indo-Pacific has become the center of world politics, and the need for maritime security and economic hubs has never been greater. So what does this mean for us? Should we celebrate this decision? Should we fear it? Or should we, as responsible citizens and scholars, call for a balanced path where development and conservation go in hand? This lecture will try to answer all these questions. Now let us look into the first issue, the evolution of Great Nicobar Island project, that is from colonial background. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands have long historical of being frontiers for distant powers. Under the British, they were penal colonies, symbols of exile and punishment. Great Nicobar, however, remained largely untouched, a remote rainforest island where the Shompenes and Nicobaris continued their way of life. After independence, the Indian state had to redefine these islands. They could no longer remain margins. They had to become a part of the sovereign nation. Settlement schemes, agriculture experiments, and infrastructure projects began, all with one goal: so consolidate sovereignty and secure the nation's maritime frontiers. Now let us look briefly about Rajiv Gandhi's visits to Great Nicobar Island and his vision of thinking to develop Great Nicobar Island as a free port zone. Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi looked into the future. He saw the potential of Great Nicobar as a free port zone comparable to Singapore. Imagine the boldness of the vision, taking a remote rainforest island and turning into a hub of global commerce. But he faced resistance. Environmentalists warned the island perennial freshwater streams, rich biodiversity, and fragile ecology will be destroyed. Anthropologists cautioned that indigenous people will be displaced. As a result, the proposal was shelved. I want to share here with my experience in Great Nicobar Island from 1993 to 2001. When I conducted field work in Great Nicobar between 1993 and 1996, and later during my stay in Port Blair until 2001, I witnessed these debates firsthand. I spoke with Professor Saldana, who emphasized the ecological costs. Scholars like Madhav Gadgil and Ramachandra Guha raised alarm bells about the development without conservation. NGOs and forums joined hands to protect the island. At the time, the political climate was not ready for such a massive project. The idea remained on paper, a dream waiting for the right moment. The project revived in 21st century. That moment has arrived now in the 2020s with India asserting itself as a major Indo-Pacific power. The Great Nicobar project has been revived. This is not just about economics, it is about security, trade, and India's global standing. Now let us look into the strategic necessity in the Indo-Pacific century. Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji decisions to move the Great Nicobar project from policy paper to execution reflects a strategic calculation. The island is too central to India's maritime future to be left undeveloped. The political will he brought to bear, working with Niti Aayog, ANIDCO, and line ministries, created momentum that earlier governments lacked. That is the fact of the governance. Let us look at the map. Just south Great Nicobar lies the Malacca Strait, one of the world's most important maritime choke points. Every year, more than 60,000 ships carry oil, gas, and trade goods pass through this narrow corridor, connecting the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Whoever has a presence near this strait has a powerful voice in the global trade. For too long, India has depended on foreign ports like Singapore and Colombo for transshipment. Building a deep sea transshipment hub in Great Nicobar will change that. It will reduce cost, strengthen the Indians' control over maritime trade, and ensures national security. Strategically, the island also strengthens India's Andaman and Nicobar Command, the nation's only tri-service command. In a world where the Indo-Pacific is the epicenter for competition between China, United States, Japan, and others, India cannot afford to neglect Great Nicobar Island project. Now let us briefly look into the economic imperatives of this proposed project. This economic case for the project is equally very strong. Transshipment hub competing with Singapore, Colombo, and Port Klang. Job creation, thousands of jobs for islanders and settlers. Tourism, ecotourism, cultural tourism, and adventure tourism can thrive. Blue economy, fisheries, renewable energy, and maritime research can be developed. Global connectivity, linking India more closely to Asian and East Asia regions. But, and here is the key, this cannot be a copy paste of Singapore or Dubai. India must learn from their success but adopt them to the ecological and social realities of Great Nicobar Island. Now let us briefly look into the ecological and anthropological concerns. Here lies the heart of debate. The Great Nicobar Biosphere Reserve is a UNESCO recognized treasure of biodiversity. The Shompenes, one of the least contacted tribal groups in the world. The Nicobaris with their own culture, traditions, and livelihood systems. When I lived in Port Blair and spoke with ecologists, the strongest message I heard was this: if you destroy the ecology of Great Nicobar, we destroy its future. The 2004 tsunami showed us the vulnerability of these islands. Any development must be disaster resilient. We cannot afford reckless building. Therefore, while developing is necessary, it must be responsible, inclusive, and ecological. Here, I have proposed a a tentative blueprint for execution and development with responsibility of this proposed Great Nicobar project. First one is the phased development. Start with essential infrastructure. Monitor ecological impact before scaling up. Tribal safeguards. Implement free, prior, and informed consent for the Shompenes and Nicobaris. Strengthen the role of AJVS, that is Andaman Adimajati Vikas Samiti. Green infrastructure, renewable energy, that is solar, wind, and tidal, disaster resilient housing and ports, eco sensitive constructions, and development of eco corridors, preserve forest tracts and wildlife habitats, limit settlement zones to specific areas, independent monitoring, ecological audits by Indian Institute of Science and other similar institutions needed, public transparency and accountability. If this blueprint is followed, India can create a world-class hub that is also a model for sustainable development. Now let us briefly look into the political leadership and continuity of this project. History reminds us that great projects require great leadership. Indira Gandhi emphasized ecological balance with national security. Rajiv Gandhi demanded boldly of a free port like Singapore. Narendra Modi ji, the government has had the courage to launch the project. This continuity across decades shows the Great Nicobar is not a partisan issue. It is a national project. It requires unity, vision, and responsibility from all of us. Dear friends, I think I have discussed briefly about the evolution of the Great Nicobar Island project. Now, before concluding, let us summarize the discussion which you have made so far. Friends, Great Nicobar is more than an island. It is a mirror of India's choice. Will we choose reckless exploitation or will we rise to the higher path of responsible stewardship? Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji government's decision to revive the Great Nicobar project is not just a policy. It is a momentum in history. Let us embrace it wholeheartedly, but let us also shape it wisely. Development must not be blind. It must carry with it the heartbeat of ecology, the dignity of indigenous communities, and the sacredness of conservation. If we succeed, Great Nicobar will not remain merely a port or an airport. It will shine as India's gift to the Indo-Pacific world, a beacon showing that growth, security, and ecology can live in harmony. As Rajiv Gandhi once dreamed, as Indira Gandhi once reminded us, and as Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji now decisively act to turn vision into reality, the time has come for India to imagine Great Nicobar not as a frontier of conflict, but as a frontier of hope. Let us work together, leaders, scholars, citizens, to ensure that Great Nicobar becomes a symbol of India's rise, not just in power, but in wisdom and responsibility. At the end, I would like to mention this quotation. Great Nicobar is not just India's edge on the map, it is India's leap into the future. Under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, let us make it frontier of hope, where development and nature walk in hand. Thank you very much for your kind hearing of this piece of discussion on the evolution of Great Nicobar Island project. If you like it, please forward to your friends, relatives, and group people, students and scholars. And also, I request you to subscribe the channel to know more about ethnic cultures of India. Thank you very much. Hope we will meet you in another discussion on Great Nicobar Island.